All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for this session. I'm with Eric. I'm going to let you maybe introduce yourself again for those of you who don't know you.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm very pleased to attend this webinar. So I'm one of the co-founders of Intuitum, and I'm mainly working on architecture.
Great. So, as you requested on Discord and LinkedIn, the topic for today will be essentially around the framework management, those libraries that could contain either some standards, matrices, could be catalog of threads, and so on. And this session will be in two parts. The first one will be more about the theoretical concepts that we will cover together. And the second one will be more dive into all the use cases that we will have. We can see your screen. Great. I think we can just dive straight ahead and start with your presentation. And as usual, just use the chat. If you have questions, I'm going to be monitoring the questions on the chat. And from time to time, I'm going to interrupt Eric just to focus on either your questions or make sure that we cover all the use cases. All right, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Abder. So we are going to explore these use cases. So how to create a list of requirements to check, and we will use the recent sovereignty framework from European Union as a good example, a simple example and recent. Second one is I want to organize and group the requirements into clusters of requirements. So we will see how to use implementation groups. We'll use the Siphon 2025 as good example for that. Then we'll look how to capture the maturity score for requirements. So with some sub questions to customize the scale, label, capture the implementation score and the documentation score for Siphon, for example, and even to customize the weights of each requirement. Then we look at how to explore to have a typical expected control, typical threats. We use Siphon for that. How to have questions in requirements. We'll look at CMMC. Then we'll go deeper, more advanced things like requirements based on previous answer to have requirements dynamically, to manage multiple languages in your framework, to have a catalog for reference control and threats. We have two good examples for that, managed by, provided by Intuitum. And then Abder will cover the AR engine to create a mapping, and we'll look at, we'll discuss about the mapping feature and how to create a library and how we can bundle multiple objects in libraries. So let me first introduce the library concept in CISO Assistant. I think it's very important to have the fundamental concepts when you address something, because it makes things much simpler to understand once you have this picture in your mind. So library is a container for object descriptions. You have frameworks, threads, reference controls, mappings, and risk matrices for the moment. We will enrich that probably in the future. And you have two parts in the software. One is the library store, where you have all the built-in libraries that are present, and you can add custom libraries. The library store, let's say it's inert, it's not active, but you can load a library from the library store in the loaded libraries part, where it can be used by users. So as as long as you don't load the library, you can't use it in the software. So it's up to the administrator to decide which libraries are loaded. Concerning the mappings, we have something changing in the next days, that all mappings will be automatically loaded, but currently it is still loaded in the traditional way. So a library, as I said, is a container for catalog object descriptions. It's not the object in your database, it's the description of object. It has a YAML format, so to make it easy to read. It is stored in the library store. It is identified by a unique URN, so you are responsible for, if you create libraries, to use URNs that are unique. So the simplest solution is to use URN followed by the name of your company. So in that way, you're sure not to have a collision, and you make sure to use a unique URN in your own company. And we have a version number, which is a simple integer, and you should not rely to link it to the version of your standard. It is completely independent. It's the version of your library. Just increment it when you want to make a fix or an update of the library. Just +1. That's enough. Don't bother to have relevant numbers or meaningful numbers. So the structure of a library is quite simple. You have metadata for the library itself, and then it contains objects. Each object has, again, metadata and content. So all objects have both metadata and content, except the library itself only has metadata. Okay, so to create a library, you can generate the YAML file directly. Some power users do that with their own scripts. They have their own software for managing that. That's fine, but it's for power user. We don't expect that from most users, and for our part, we use generally an Excel file. We sometimes have converters that convert the Excel, one Excel in another Excel in our own format. We have used two formats from the beginning of CISO Assistant. Let's call the first one V1 and the new one V2. I will only talk about V2 because it's the most powerful, and that's what we are using currently. Our tools are evolving only for V2. Many libraries in our GitHub are still in V1. So if you want to start from a V1 library, just convert it in V2 using the convert library V2 converter. It's simple. It will convert your library, adding the underscore new suffix in the file name. So the V1 is the old format, but we should use now, everybody should use the V2 format. Everything you can do in V1 can be done in V2. All the tools that I'm talking about are present in the GitHub, in the tools subdirectory at the root of the repo. So you can find everything here. So what is the structure for V2 Excel files? So we have tabs that end with underscore meta or underscore content. So all other tabs, if there are some other tabs, which is not obviously not necessary, they are simply ignored. So you can put some documentation if you want in any tab with a name that is not finishing with meta or content. So when you have something underscore meta, it's the metadata of the object with key value pairs. So there is no header, only the column A is the key and column B is the value. So very simple, the format is very simple. Concerning the content, so it depends of the content type, and it describes objects with in this case you have a header. The first line is a header with each column, the name of each column, and it depends of the type of object. The library meta is the mandatory tab that describes the library itself. So it's the only object you will find that doesn't have an equivalent underscore content tab. Okay, so let's go for localization, how to localize. So we have a very simple convention for localizing any field that is relevant to localize. Let's say a reference ID, for example. Generally you don't localize that, but a name, description, annotation are good candidates for localization. So to localize metadata, like the name of your library, you simply duplicate the key value with the key in this way with the language, and the value is the localized value. And for content tabs, it's the same idea, but this time we are duplicating columns. So for example, the description column will be duplicated, and you will find the description in this way with the language being FR, DE, etc. All the language that you want to support. It is optional, and you don't need to translate in 20 languages. You can just translate in the languages that are relevant for you. The default language is defined in the meta, in the library meta. It is not necessarily English. You can do a library that is in French, in any language. It is not necessary to translate it in English. Okay, here is a typical example with the Cloud Sovereignty Framework from EU. So you see key values. So we have the type, library, the URN. So here is the structure that we recommend for libraries. URN, the company, risk, library, Cloud Sovereignty Framework. So you can change that, but we require that format for what we include in the repo, in the public repo. The version, so let's start to 1. It doesn't matter. In fact, the only thing is to increment it when you have an update. The default local, so here it is in English. The ref ID, the reference ID for this library. So generally we don't put spaces in ref ID, but in fact it's not enforced. You can put almost anything, but we recommend something more in computer style. The name, so that's plain English. Description, plain English. Copyright, an important field. You should always respect copyright for the library. So you can put here, it is European Union, so it is free to copy. The provider, so it's the entity that is behind the standard that provides the content. And the packager, it is the entity that provides the library. So it is distinct generally, and it is important to have these fields correct. So all these fields are mandatory. Then you can have dependencies. So dependencies are optional. It's a list of URNs of referenced libraries when you are referencing one object from another library in your library. We will see that. Okay, so the type of objects, we've seen that you have a type library here. So what types you can have in meta tabs? You can have frameworks, threats, reference controls, requirement mapping set, and risk matrix. That's all. Huh? And you can have secondary tabs for sub-objects of frameworks. So we have scores, implementation groups, answers, and URN prefix. Okay, so to create simple libraries, the best solution is to take an example, a simple example, and just adapt it to your case. So for framework, for example, we recommend to use the Cloud Sovereignty framework. For threats, we recommend the Intuitem command catalog. You have the _new because it has been converted in the V2 format. For the Cloud Sovereignty framework, it was natively in V2 format. So for reference control, the docpol in Intuitem directory. For mapping, we'll see that you're better of using the prepare framework script that will take 2 YAML and create an Excel file that you have just to complete. And for matrix, we recommend the EBIOS RM file as an example, which is in the tools matrix. I think I'm missing tool Excel matrix directory in the repo. So for advanced frameworks, we have other examples that are interesting. The Google Safe is very interesting because it has suggested reference controls, suggested threats, URN prefix, and implementation groups. And the Cypher is interesting for scores and annotation. So the last feature before going to example is dynamic questionnaires. It's something we have introduced very recently. So it allows you to have automatic result calculation, automatic score calculation. It allows to fold or unfold whole sections of requirements, which are implementation groups. It allows you to select default implementation group when you create the audit, and it even allows to have questions that are hidden or exposed depending on the answer to other questions. So to explore that, we will use the example questionnaire, which is directly under the tools directory, not in the Excel directory. So this one is artificial, but it is, as it is very recent, it is the best way to get used to all these advanced features. So I would say that's all for the theoretical part. So I think up there we can switch to examples now.
Sure. So thank you, Eric. I'm looking if there's any questions. Yeah, it will be available as a recording, given that there's a lot of things to cover. It's probably better just to go over all those concepts. Whenever you're stuck, you just go back to this. Just before we dive into the practical part, one important aspect to highlight is regarding the fact that the current workflow is based on customizing those Excel sheets, because this is what we found so far, is that most people are already using some form of Excel sheet for their frameworks, for their catalogs, and so on. That's why we built the toolbox around that. But we have definitely some plans that we're designing currently for beginning of next year to use directly the UI of the application, so that you can just drag and drop those Excel sheets instead of going through the Python scripts. And afterward, if we are covering all the cases, maybe we can consider even like live editor on the application if it's something that is requested by the community. So long story short, just keep in mind that the workflow is basically just to pick, as Eric mentioned, one of the examples, customize it and fine-tune it to your needs, make it go through the toolbox to convert it to the expected YAML format, and that's it. To make it more interactive, what we're going to do is that we will cover all the use cases that Eric mentioned there, and I'm going to highlight them one by one. And you probably can just go over each one. Let's go with the very basic one. First use case, I have a simple basic list of requirements that I want to check. How can I do that?
Okay, so let's first look at the results. So I go in the compliance.
Maybe you can have the full screen or something. Yeah.
Okay, and we will create. It's a use case one. Take my demo. I will use the Cloud Sovereignty framework as target framework. All the rest is optional, so let's just dive in. So here is how we use a simple framework. We have here 8 requirements. So just click on it. You see here the URL of the requirement. You have a description. You have annotation, and more or less that's all. That's all we have. And you have that structure. You have that structure. You see the structure is very simple. Here we only have 8 requirements in simple structure, no complex tree. So how can we do that with the workbench? So let's have a look at this one. So here we have the siphon, CMMC. Perhaps I didn't open it. It's here. Okay, so let's open it. So we have the library meta. We already had a look at it. So very simple. Here you see also the publication date. If you don't put it, it is created dynamically. So we recommend to create it dynamically. You have the version. The numbers here, they can be in text format or number format. It doesn't matter. It will work in both cases. Then you have the meta and content pairs. One is the objectives, and here we have the scores. So in the we didn't. So let's have a look at the score. Let's take one, and I say I want to enable scoring, and you see the scoring. It's not just a percentage. We have 5 values from 0 to 4 with you see the description of the scores. So that's why we will find the framework tab here with the tab framework with the meta and the content, and you have the scores here with the you see type scores and the content. So the prefix, what you put before meta and content, it's up to you. You don't need to use scores or framework. You can call that foo or anything, what is relevant for you. You see here we have objectives, and it is not a word that is meaningful for the tool. So here, what do we have in an objective in a meta for a framework? So type framework. So generally the first line it's type and the type of the tab. So it's a framework. We have the base URL that will be used to create all the URLs of each node. We have the URL of the framework itself. We have the reference ID of the framework, name, description. As we have scores, we have min score, max score, and the scores definition. So it means the scores tab here, scores meta and scores content will contain the description of scores. And that's all. Even if you don't have score, you only need these 6 lines, and that's enough. We can have a look. Where do we have the, if you go in the framework, here you find the name description of, here you have, for example, the URN. The URN of the framework will be here. The ref ID is here. So you will find all the details of a framework that comes from this part of the Excel file. You will find them here on the object itself. Okay, then we have for the scores, it's very simple. The content is the score, the value, integer value, and the name and description, and that's all. So this is a very simple, it's not the simplest one, but almost one of the simplest that we have to gather a group of simple requirements.
So to go back to the initial use case, if we just zoom into, if we can just like stick to the Excel sheet, and on the objectives content, just to see like the key columns that we have.
Yeah.
So essentially we are dealing with name and description. Those are pretty obvious for everyone, and the reference ID. I'm guessing the reference ID is just a convention, whatever convention you guys are using. And can you just maybe explain in 10 seconds what depth and accessible means?
Yeah, so accessible is just a Boolean. So we just put X inside to say this line is a real requirement. If it's not accessible, it means it's a title, it's the structure of the document. So it's informative. It can also be, let's say, some definitions, some information that is given in the framework, and you don't need to access that, but you want to keep it. So that's very important, of course. The number of, here you have, in this one, we have, if I go back to Cloud Sovereignty, you see that we have 8 requirements, and here you will have 8 lines with X in the accessible column. So this is very important. The depth is a way to describe a tree-like structure. So here it is flat. We'll see later on other examples. An interesting tree. And
So
ref ID, it's just a short reference for the requirement. It's not mandatory. But it is generally part of the framework of the standard.
Great. So those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns are like the most fundamental ones to create in the frameworks. Accessible reference ID, name, and descriptions are pretty obvious. Depth to create a tree structure, as in like a paragraph or as in section, subsection, chapter, and something like this. And accessible is to indicate to the toolbox what are the items that I'm expecting to answer compliance-wise, or what are the others that are just helping me structure my document, right?
Exactly.
All right. So this is a very basic fundamental structure, but pretty useful one. What if I want to move to something more advanced and I want to start grouping my items? Let's say you pretty much answered the first part, which is the depth that can allow me to create maybe a chapter that will contain multiple ones. So can we maybe just see an example where we have multiple depth?
Okay, so let's take the famous siphon. So here it's much bigger, and you see that we have depths with various levels up to, I think we go up to 4. We have 4 levels of depth. So
is there a limit on CISO Assistant on depth?
No, okay. no limit, no practical limit. So you see the first level, you have the functions, the list CSF functions. So it's very obvious. In the second level, then you have the titles. So it is the sub-functions in Siphon. And you have name description, ref ID, but it is not accessible. Then at level 3, so this one is very, it's very constant. There is no various depths. So here you have the third level for, so I don't remember the name, if it's subfunction or in this CSF, but you find GVOC01, and if we go up to level 4, you have the requirements, so GVOC01.1, and here you have the X4 accessible.
All right. So what if the depth is good if I'm like sticking to a tree structure, but what if I want something that can allow me to create like form of clusters or subgroups, let's say for maturity or for functional domains that are not necessarily related to the structure of the document?
Yeah, so that's this framework is very interesting for this use case, because in Siphon you have groups of requirements that are transversal. For example, you have basic requirements, important requirements, and essential requirements, and they are embedded. The essential contains everything in important, which contain everything in basic. And moreover, you have key measures and you have governance measures. So you can want to see, for example, all government measures at all level, or you want to stick to basic, or you want to go to have governance measures only for basic level. So how do we manage that? We have the concept of implementation group that I think is coming from CIS.
Exactly.
It is very handy for for programming, for programmers, because it is very flexible. You can just define as many implementation groups as necessary here. So we have the basic, important, essential, and we have basic key measures, important key measures, essential key measures, and then basic governance measure, etc. So we have 9 implementation groups. We reference them by their reference ID, so we use short letters to keep that simple and concise. Name, description. You see the description is optional. It's not necessary here. And when we describe the requirements, we just put the implementation groups for accessible requirements. We highly recommend that you don't put implementation group in non-accessible sections, non-accessible nodes. Just leave it empty. This will be calculated dynamically. So it is only for accessible nodes that it is relevant to put an implementation group or several implementation groups. So this one, for example, is in important, essential, and it is a governance measure. So it is also important governance and essential governance, etc. For example, this one is only essential and essential governance. This one is at the 3 level, but it is neither a key measure nor a governance measure, etc. So you can be very flexible, and we're going to look what is the consequence of putting this implementation group in the tool. So let's start an audit with the Siphon. Okay, so I use the Siphon. You see here I can already select one of or several of the implementation group. So let's say I just want to start with basic for the moment. So I have 34 requirements. Okay, so it's much simpler for me, only 34, because if I change and add, for example, important, then I go to 133. Perhaps you wonder what would occur if I don't use basic, only important. Still 133. Why? Because basic is part of important, but that's how you define in your Excel file, how you define your implementation group. So everything is possible. You can have groups, implementation groups that are disjoint, or you can have them embedded as they are here. There are no constraints on that. You are absolutely free. And so this is very, let's say you just want the key measures for basic, and that will be even simpler. You only will have 13 measures. So that's your starting point. If you are starting with Siphon, you can start with that. And then you can update later. And you don't lose, when you go back and forth, you don't lose your content. It's only hidden in the display, but you will never lose your content when changing the implementation group here.
All right, so let's move on and try to keep the time. What if you mentioned the scoring earlier, which is good. What you mentioned is that we can put our own scale for the scoring, but what if I want to customize the weight? Is it something that is possible to say that for each requirement they have different weights? How does this operate?
Yeah, I think we've seen that in the cloud sovereignty. It's part of the standard that the weights are variable between the 8 requirements. You see that some requirements have a 20 weight, while the lower has only 5. So this, with the previous version of CISO Assistant, it was not possible. The weight was 1 for everybody. So now you can add the weight column in your table, in the content of the framework, and this column, these values will be used to make a weighting average of
weighted average. Okay,
of
great.
the score. Yes. So when you calculate the score, if we go back to our first example. Here, the score that will be calculated, if you use the score, it was not for the moment. Here, let's say I put 1, for example, and for the second one, I put 3. So average would be 2, but here we have 1.8. Why? Because we have 15 and 10. So you can calculate that, but you see that 15 is more than 10, so it's more proximate to 1 than to 3.
Great. And is there like any conditions, or it's like basic weight on the system? Should it be integer? Should it be specific? Or
Yeah,
then again, you just
integer.
multiply?
Default value is 1, and should be a positive integer.
Okay, great. Awesome. So what if we move forward now to more sophisticated cases? In some cases, I want to, let's say, define a list of requirements, but I want to embed an expected control or a typical control that I'm hoping to implement, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel each time. I will just pick them out of the shelf. How should I do that?
Okay, so we have a good example with Safe for that. Safe is a Google framework that is relevant for AI. So we have here here it is. You can see it is still in V1 format. That's that. I will.
Maybe we can use we can stick to it or use the ISO.
Well, I could justly, it's an occasion to show how I can transform a V1 to V2.
Sure,
So
let's do this. Yeah.
Python convert v1 to v2. So it is in the Excel, Google, and Saif.
Just Google, I think.
Saif, yes. So you see I'm converting and it creates the Google Saif underscore new. So I will use this this file. So in Excel, this one. Okay, so you can see the result of the transformation in v2. So now we have the library meta and the reference controls meta. We'll see that, and we have the assessment method. So that's the framework itself, and with the assessment content. So that's the main part. And you can see, so we have a nice description. We have implementation groups. I can wrap text here. Okay, so here you can see that we have new columns that we didn't see yet. It is reference controls and threats. And it has a strange format with a number and a reference ID, and you can have a comma-separated list of values. So its cell can be a list of reference controls. The number before here, the column is a prefix. It's a URN prefix. So one, you see here we have a URN prefix content, and one is simply a shortcut for this this value. So instead of having very long URNs in your list, you only use shortcuts, which make it much simpler, much more readable. Imagine if it would be a full URN, that would be very
all right,
very
so
long.
basically just a kind of index to avoid the repeating the prefix. And
Yeah,
we just,
exactly.
We just put any expected control next to the requirement.
Yeah. And
Okay.
what's important is that the tool doesn't, the tool that is creating the convert library tool doesn't bother to know if it exists or not. It just it is just using that URN, and you have to make sure that this value is relevant, especially if you use a library that is external. And we are developing, will soon release a tool that is making all the controls verifications that you didn't make a mistake when referencing other controls.
And by the look of it, I'm guessing the threads column is following pretty much the same pattern, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, and it is the same prefix. So we have so it we have yeah, we have the same prefix. Here it is for threads.
Yeah, it's the same one. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see how it looks now on the UI of the app once it digests some customization like this one. What kind of use case will we have?
Okay, so let's create. It is our use case 3 with Google Saif.
Use case 4.
I think I didn't load it yet. Sorry, so let's load it. Yeah, okay. So we have two implementation group. One is creator consumer. If I select no implementation group, it means I don't use the implementation group feature.
Right.
So it
I'm
means
picking
that
everything. Okay.
I take everything, yes.
Okay.
That's important to note. Okay, so here we have 12 requirements. If we go inside one requirement, we see that the additional information section is richer than for other frameworks. Here we have the suggested reference controls that we had in the Excel file. If we go back to content, you see here was GSC10, and here we have two threads, UTD and ISD. So here you have GST10, ISD, UTD. So you find simply what you have put in the Excel file will be suggested here as a suggestion for reference control. You can even say, I use the suggested control. So you see that's automagic, great way to go fast. And for the threats, so it will be used in case you are not, let's say, you are not compliant. Okay, I'm done and I'm not compliant. Oh, and you see here you have two potential threats, the threats that we have in the table. So this is a way to have almost automatic risk analysis when you are filling your compliance.
It's kind of pre-risk assessment where it's kind of giving me this risk or more threat radar to identify what will be the consequence of not being compliant, pretty much.
Okay, let's say, for example, if I'm now compliant, I applied some measures. Now you see the threats have been solved.
Okay, so this answers also the use case 5, which is if I want to link to typical threats. Now, more advanced case will be regarding the fact that what if I'm building a list of requirements, but for each one of the requirements, I want to have sub-questions, some things that could be useful for third parties or even internally. Let's say that I'm managing embedding security within development project, or just want to have sub-items to help me fine-tune or refine or better assess my requirement. How should I do that?
Okay, so let's take the CMMC as a quick example for that. So first I go to audit. If I have the CMMC, no, so let's, I can quick start, but I prefer personally to go in governance library. So just loading CMMC. Okay, and with this framework, you'll see that we have questions which help evaluate the compliance. So the description is, I should limit information system access to authorized users, etc. And to help me answer that question, I have answered that requirement. I have sub-questions that make my my evaluation simpler. So are authorized user identified? Let's say yes, 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 here no, yes, yes, or no. Then I would say, so that status is just my work, where I am in my work, and the result I would say partially compliant, because sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. So my evaluation as the auditor, I would say partially compliant, and I can add evidence controls to justify all the yes. Okay, so having these questions is a very efficient way to help the auditor doing the assessment.
All right. How do we do that Excel-wise?
Yeah, so let's go to CMMC. I converted it in a format V2. So we have, of course, the library. There's nothing special. So it is in the content. I will have new columns. These columns are the questions and answer.
Maybe you can
columns.
zoom in.
Yes, I will reorganize it a bit first, and okay, and then I will zoom. Okay, so we have here, for example, the first one, ACL1311, name, description, implementation group, and what's new is only the questions. So we have 6 questions, and we only have one answer type. So here, and you can understand it's yes, no, not applicable. So for all questions, the only type of answer is yes, no, or not applicable. You could have different answer types for each question. In that case, you should put 6 lines in regard of the 6 lines, 6 questions. Either you only have one, it means it's the same for all of them, or you have the exact same number and it is 1 for 1. Okay, and this one is simple. It's always yes, no, not applicable. And these answers are described here in the answer meta answer content. You have all answer types that are described. So you have the ID, yes, no, NA. You have the type, unique choice, and the question choices. So yes, no, or not applicable. And this is this will be referred here in the meta of the framework. You see that we have answers definition. It is answers, so it's the this pair of tabs, the answers meta and answers content, that will contain the definition of answers for this framework.
Okay. Now with this, could I have within the same row different type of answers? Maybe A, B, and C will be yes, no, and the C, D, and or D, E, and F could be yes, no, not applicable. Can I just combine them?
Yeah. So let's take a more advanced example, which is the example questionnaire. So it is the most complete. So here you have, for example, a tab that is only informative. It's called info. We have the library meta, which is very simple. And let's go to the framework content. So here we have, for example, questions. Here we have 3. You see, we have 3 various answers. So it's different answer for each question, different type of answer for each questions. So we can find here each question. You see we have a unique choice, but this one, the Q3, it's multiple choice. And you can have text and date. If we want to put text or date, this is possible. The text obviously is very interesting. So here you have text and date here, with the question is enter text, enter a date.
Right. So I'm getting question on different channel. So why did we bother picking up all those sophisticated cases on Excel sheets? It's for the simple reason that the Assistant initially was designed as drop-in replacement for people using Excel heavily. That's why, when you're building those multiple choices or macros or wherever with Excel, you end up doing something equivalent to this. The idea was to help them migrate as smooth as possible from their realm. That's why we kind of built our toolbox around migration from Excel. All right, so let's increase the heat a bit up now and move on to some of the new features. And try to answer one case, which is what if, and it happens a lot in TPRM, third-party risk management, where you want to answer only one question and it should toggle multiple questions or multiple requirements at once. How can I do that?
Okay, so first I will load the library with the example questionnaire, because it is not by default. So I have created the YAML with the conversion tool. You see here Python convert library v to example questionnaire. So this has created example questionnaire.yaml. So I'm just simply loading that here. I'm adding that here in the library. So it is now in the library store. So it is it is here. So I will okay, so in fact it is already loaded, so I can use it directly in the tool. So let's go in compliance. So example questionnaire. So this one is very sophisticated. You see, when I start, I have very little, very few requirements, and I have questions. You see here questions. So let's say I answer here. I say yes, it is documented. Oh, did you see what occurred? You have sub-questions. When I say no, I don't have sub-questions, but when I say yes, I have two sub-questions. Is the policy review reviewed annually? Okay, let's say yes. Do I have multi-factor? Yes. And oh, great, you see that now my result is compliant. I can't change my result, it is calculated, and I can't change my score, it is calculated. And you see that the score here, it is multiple choice. So this one is a bit awkward, in fact, but it's for the example. You see that the score is depending on the also on your choice. So how did we do all this magic? And there is last one magic. If I select that, I may save. Now you see I have more. I have new questions. I have advanced requirements. I didn't have that before. That's something that has appeared because I answered the initial questions. So this is a lot of magic. This is the dynamic questionnaire features. So how does it work? It is still by enriching the Excel description. You have this depends on feature. So the depends on with the condition, it is managing the the dynamic questions. You remember I answered yes, and then had new questions that appeared. So I can say that when I do slash is nothing, there is no dependency. But this one, the Q2 question, it is depending on the question 1 and value 1 or 2. If I select 1 or 2, this question 2 will appear. And Q3 is depending on the first question, and again, only the value 1. So you have, so this is one of the most sophisticated. You have explanations directly in the Excel sheet to help you understand how it works. And we have, so that's in the tab in the framework content. The other magic, it's in the answer content tab. You have select implementation group. So again, if you select yes, we will select the Node.gov1 implementation group. If you select no, we select nothing, and so on. So you are able to fold or unfold whole groups of clusters of requirements depending of the values, the choice you are selecting.
Right.
And for the score and result, it is quite simple. We have a add score. For each answer, you have a score. It can be negative. And for result, we have true or false. True mean you are compliant. False mean you are not compliant. So it is then if you have everything is true, you are compliant. If everything is false, you are not compliant. And if you are some are true, other are false, you are partially compliant. You can even change the color if you want of the question to have something more fancy. I think we have,
yeah, in a way, we kind of built in this kind of logic layer that allow people to make some pre-calculated decisions depending on the previous answers. And what kind of use cases do you see beyond the TPR and part that could be fun and useful for people actually who are answering the questionnaires? What could be other relevant use cases with this?
we have some questionnaires that help you make decisions. So that's also something that can be interesting to answer a few questions, and then you have tips saying you should do that or you should do that.
Like
So,
pre-risk assessment, so
yeah,
to speak.
more or less. So it is decision orientation questionnaires. So we are even working on improving the work to have more flexibility in the scoring instead of doing average, to have to show the addition of scores. Let's say if you are more than 25, then you should do that. If you have less than
Right.
10,
Yeah,
you
is there like
should do that.
ranges for the score?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Great. So let's continue with advanced cases. Okay, so this one is pretty simple. By the way, guys, the use cases that we're showcasing here are use cases that came from either LinkedIn or Discord. We just kind of aggregated them for the sake of clarity so that you can go back with timestamps to review the video later on. All right. This one is, I guess we kind of covered it, but we can go back a little bit. How can I manage multiple languages of my framework?
Yeah, so that's what I explained on the localization. So you
Maybe through an example this time, it will be
Yeah.
probably more efficient.
So here we have one here. This one is translated in French. So the default is English, and we translate. You see that the description column here in English is translated in French here just by adding the FR suffix here. And it's the same for metadata. You can simply duplicate description. It's duplicated here with the FR suffix.
Great. So in other words, to answer this question, it's basically to add the suffix with brackets, and we put just the ISO code of the language that we're targeting, right?
Yes.
I believe that when you showed the Siphon one, it was an interesting case because it was in Dutch, French, English.
No, not the last one. Not
The 2023 maybe.
Yeah. We or ISO 27 is
or ISO.
Yeah, ISO. It's one of the most
translated or requested.
Yes, regarding languages. So yeah, here you have you see Sweden, Spanish, Czech, French, and
Awesome.
same for
okay, so any
columns.
column that supports translation, we just add brackets and the ISO code of the language.
Yeah, so it makes the document quite heavy, lots of columns, but it works. It's
All right.
still efficient.
So can we show how this translates into the app? Let's pick the ISO, for instance.
Yeah. So I think I have one here. So here I'm in English. Let's switch to
Spanish,
for example, where it is.
Spanish. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, and you see now my requirements are translated.
All right, great. So it's just the translation of the requirements, but the input of the users are not affected, of course. Okay, moving on. We're taking slightly more time, but at least we will cover all the use cases, and you will have the recording to go over all those items. All right. The next one is regarding the fact that what if I want to bundle multiple controls as reference controls or threads? Because up to now we talked about requirements, we talked about those sub-questions requirements. What about those reference controls and threads?
Yeah, in fact, we had that already in SAIF, but in SAIF we had three things. We had a framework, we have controls, and we have threads. All the three of them in the same library. So in fact, in a library, you can put, that's the advantage of V2, you can put any number of any type of object in the same library. Doesn't mean it's a good idea, but sometimes it's relevant. Here it's relevant because the standard comes with typical threads, typical controls, and requirements. So it's simpler to put all the three of them in the same file. Now, let's say you want to do a file only with threads or a file only with controls. That's possible, and we have good examples in the Intuitem directory. If you go here, we have the docpol and the Intuitem command catalog. Let's start with docpol. So the name is a bit awkward. It's a bit old, but we have kept it. We have kept it, and it contains various requirements. Reference controls. So you have the library content. So it's a common, and in the it's an old format. Sorry, that's V1. So you can convert it to V2 with the V1 to V2, but the content
The logic is the same.
Yeah,
So,
it's
okay.
the same.
So
you have the only the controls. So with ref ID, name, category, CSF function, description, annotation, and that's all. You don't have the depth. You don't have the accessible, etc.
it's just a list of controls, and we can reference them later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
look at the command catalog. Here I put it in V2. Here we have threads, so simply threads meta and threads. So here we have the base URL in the threads, in the meta, and in the content we have ref ID, name, description. That's all. Then the other columns, it's only translations, but it's very simple. Huh? The ref ID, the name, the description, and as simple as that. Huh?
Great. Okay, we are getting pretty much closer to the end. Now, yeah, the question obviously is regarding the mapping, because it's one of the biggest feature of the app. How can I build mapping? Because up to now, we saw that we can build a list of requirements. How can I create links that makes me move from one standard to the other?
Yeah, so we have, there is a Excel format for that, for a requirement mapping set. But to construct that, it's a bit more complex than the other objects. So we recommend using the prepare mapping V2 script. So you just do Python prepare mapping V2, and you only give the two parameters, the source and the target YAML. So let's say I go in backend libraries, and yeah, lots of possibilities. Let's just give me two up there that I can use.
Maybe Siphon 2023 to 2025.
Okay, Siphon, oh, I don't have the old one. It was not named like that. Perhaps it's
It's
CCV.
CCV, it's just CCV.
Yes. Okay. Okay, to okay, Siphon. Okay, so the source and the target. And I just launched that, and it is creating this mapping CCB, CCF, so the old one to the new one. So let's see what is how it looks like. Okay, here it is. Okay, so we have, as always, the library meta. Okay, so just information on the library. In fact, with the library meta, you don't know what's the content except for by reading the description. But it doesn't say there is a framework or there is a mapping. You don't know with the library meta. It's the other tabs that determine what is the content. So we see here we have a mapping with a type requirement mapping set, something we didn't see yet. So we have some special keys with the source framework URN, target framework URN, the source node-based URN, etc. And the most important is the mapping content. So more or less you have the source ID. So the ID is the last part of the URN. So the source ID, the target node ID, and the relationship. Rational strength of relationship is optional. And you have guidelines that explain you how to answer that. So you can have, as a relationship, you can have subset, intersect, which is the most common, equal, superset, or not related. So not related, in fact, you won't use it because you just skip it. But these words are very simple to understand. It is set theory, so you can refer to NIST standard, the OLIR standard, to have a clue about that. And you have the source and target here. Tabs are only informative. It's to avoid you skipping between files. You just have the source node IDs and the target node IDs, so it's simpler for you to fill the here the content and saying this one is let's say basic ID IMI 1.1. Let's look in the target which one it can be. Probably this one. So I take this one. I just copying here in content, and that's all. You see the basic ID AM 1.1 in the old one is ADAM 1.1 in the 2025 version, and the relationship most probably it's equal because it's almost the same. But it's a bit tedious. I would say I would have been very embarrassed to do that manually. So I referred to Abder and told him, Abder, we need to find a solution for that.
Indeed. And for this, we kind of worked on a assistant, no pun intended, that will allow us to more focus on, let me move the other screen here. There we go. So that you can focus here. Great. Within the folder that Eric mentioned on the tools, we created recently a mapping builder. This one is in early preview, just to give you a hint about what are the capabilities. And fundamentally, this is part of our research activity. By the way, if you have not seen the research paper that we published on this one, take a look on LinkedIn, where we documented all the logic and the algorithms that we built there. But in a nutshell, when you get to this folder, you will see that you have two approaches that are AI-based. The first one is essentially pull in an LLM in the classic sense where you will be interacting with whatever model you want. It will do a similarity research, and it will crunch those items until it finds a better match. And there's a lot of settings to configure there. So when you get here, there are multiple scripts. The most important one are here, and you have multiple variants. One for the built-in, I think the most important one are those two. Semantic mapper. This one will query an LLM that can be local, like to Olama, and you use whatever model you want. On my setup, I have a bunch of them that I experiment with. So it could be Gemma, could be Mistral, could be whatever model you're comfortable with. And you just pass the starting points, the target point, and let the LLM digest that to find you the best matches possible. Now, of course, depending on your hardware, this could take some time. In my case, even with my M4 Mac, for complex framework, sometimes it took me up to between 2 to 3 days, which could be a bit intense. That's why there's a different variant, which is based on SBERT, which is more specialized in semantic analysis. And for this one, we're not using full-fledged LLM, but more of embeddings approach. So if you're interested into experimenting and exploring those topics, take a look at the mapping builders, and there's even a notebook that you can play with. And the output have either like Excel sheets that could be worth exploring. It will generate multiple variants for you to compare with, but the most interesting one will be the converter to an actual heat map that will give you the correlation matrix. And this one is pretty useful because it tells you that if you're coming from framework A to B, given that this is just an update of the siphon, we kind of see a strong correlation here with some relationships in those sections. So it's more for people who want to dive into those items and analyze the results of the LLM to better match what they're looking for. Of course, you don't need to go over all those steps, but if you are interested into semantic analysis, you can look at our research activities on the paper, and here you have the folder to do that. At the end of the day, it boils down to what Eric mentioned, where you have the set theory verbs or relationships that can allow you to link between two standards. All right, so with this, we covered the mapping use case. Let's go back to what are the other questions that we have not covered? Looking at chat. All right, let me maybe answer one quick question. Adrian, what happens if from the source I can't touch 3 entries in target for mapping? All right, do you want to answer this one, Eric?
Can you repeat it? So from the source?
What if I have multiple relationships? I'm going from a source requirement and going to 3 target requirements.
Okay. So,
how do I put that?
Yeah, you can do that. You can do in the mapping, in the Excel mapping file, you can add as many lines as you want, and so you can just duplicate a line and saying, okay, so this one, it's my baseline, but I can, I can say it is also referring to ID AM, let's say 2 in intersect, for example. I can do that. So there is no limit on the number of links you can put.
Right, but the key point that you mentioned is that you need to break them down, a relationship per line or per row.
Exactly, yes, one relationship per line, yes.
All right. I think, let me know, Adrian, in the chat, if this answers your questions. Moving to the other cases, what do we have here? Yeah, I think you kind of already answered this one, but the question is, let me highlight it on the screen. There we go. I want to bundle multiple frameworks or libraries into one. like I have dependencies, but within the same framework. How can I do that? So that I'm having only one YAML file to handle.
Yeah, as I said, that with the V2 format, you can put any number of objects of any type in a library. So you are completely free to do that. So I personally prefer to have only one framework per library, but it's up to the users to decide.
All right. I think it's what you just said is literally the next question, which is, let me again highlight it. But what if I want to create links between different frameworks to create kind of dependencies? I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Let's say I want to pick the controls from the ISO for my own assessment. How can I do that?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the feature I mentioned in the Meta framework. Here you have dependencies key, where you can put a comma separated or blank separated list of URLs of reference libraries. So when you load this library, it will also load the libraries that you are mentioning, and if it cannot load the other libraries, it will fail. So, and what is the interest of having dependencies is that you will be able to use these dependencies for reference controls or typical threats. So you will use the URN prefix stuff to have the prefix for the dependent libraries, and then you can refer to existing libraries. We have a few examples of that, but one is the ISO 27 and also the Guide d'hygiène of ANSI. It's a good example of that. We are referring to the docpol document of Intuitem. So I can showcase that quickly.
Yeah. Still have two questions before we wrap up. Okay.
So that's Intuitem. If we go in ISO, okay, so it's the old format. Sorry for that, but it's the same principle. You can see that we are referring here the URN. Oh no, it's the new format. So it's referring to an external document, which is the docpol document.
All right.
That's as simple as that.
Which is pretty much the same logic as we've seen before. When we're referencing different sub-libraries, it's following the same principle, which means that URN are very critical. You should avoid an overlap even when they're on different frameworks.
Yeah, and so the important line is here, the dependency lines. It should not be empty. In that case, you should really
to be able to pull that.
Add the dependency to make sure that the library is loaded at the good moment.
All right. And the application will load automatically in the dependencies when you're loading this one?
Exactly.
Okay, great. Moving to the last two, how to manage risk metrics, because I think we didn't cover how to customize that. You mentioned that the YAML maybe is the easiest one, but maybe you can just see both.
I much prefer the Excel approach, so I recommend looking at this. This library is in V2 format, so the risk matrix 4.4. So you have the library meta of type, so it's as usual, and the spec meta here, it's risk matrix. So we didn't see yet any of that. I think it's the last one that we didn't cover. And you have the content, and you see in the content, you have the colors. So we can just make that auto fit here, and you will find your matrix here. So there is a specific arrangement. You should really follow it. So you have probability, impact, and risk. Then you have the values for probability. I recommend to have them in decreasing order, then the impact in increasing order, and the risk in increasing order. And then you can put your grid in a natural way. Beware that the probability is in vertical and the impact is in horizontal. So if in your mind the matrix in the other is transposed, then you need to keep that logic and to transpose it before describing it. But it's quite simple, and the colors are very important because we pick the color of the cell to reflect that in the tool.
Right. This one is one of the simplest YAML files. Maybe you can take a look at how it appears.
So let's go in the backend libraries. Where are all the libraries? And the name is risk matrix. So 4.4 EBUSR, this one. Okay.
All right, so yeah, it's pretty straightforward. We have translations. If we need them, then we scroll down and you have the objects, right? So basically you just ID and what is the combination. This, for those of you who are wondering about what the YAML looks like, it's essentially just like this, and then you have the grid. So it could be also an alternative if you just want to customize the matrix without going through the Excel. Feel free to experiment with this. All right, we're almost close to the end of the session. We still have one last use case, which is how, with everything that we've seen, can we perform some updates in a non-destructive way? Meaning that if I started with a framework or a catalog or matrix or whatever, how can I do an update in case if I made a typo or I decide to change the colors of a matrix or wherever? How can I manage the lifecycle and updates?
Okay, so let's change the color, for example, of this matrix. So let's say I want to have a different green value, for example, here, and this one also, and the risk. Okay, so what I will do is to change the version number. So let's put 5. I save it, and I will just convert. So Python convert library v2. So it's in Excel matrix, and it's called risk. Okay, now I have this new version here in this file. So I will, to test it, I will simply load it in the tool. So I go in governance, libraries, just at the bottom, I open this file, I will load it. Oh, this one is not...
Maybe you can just focus on the simple case of just changing the name. Yeah.
Perhaps it's the version number.
Yeah.
No, sorry. So let's change. Let's take another example. So we can use the which is this one, the ISO. Yeah, let's say we want to make a fix in the ISO. So I will increase the version number, change a content. Let's say okay, so change the title of section 5. Let's convert that. Okay. If it doesn't work, it means I have a I think I have an experimental version. I'm not on the main.
Okay, you just you're on a stable version, but the workflow essentially is just to increment the number of the version and how it will appear then once you upload it. What will be the workflow for the users?
Yeah. So when you go here, you see you have this green number with a arrow here, and it says, for example, here we fixed that next previous week. There was a fix for the cloud sovereignty framework, so we made an update, and it is not automatically applied to your instance. You need it's your choice to update or not. So if you want to update, you just have to click on the upper arrow, and then it is updated, and all your audits are unchanged. We keep all the data, so it means not all changes are possible. You should only change descriptions, names, or perhaps adding a requirement is not a problem. But if you change the URNs, then you will have trouble. So it's a very good thing to for fixes and very small changes. If you have a a complete rewrite, let's say Siphon 2023 to Siphon 2025, then you cannot use the version update approach. You should make a mapping between the old standard and the new standard.
Right. So any minor change that we are trying to achieve for like non-destructive updates, we go with the updates like this one. But any restructuring should go through an actual mapping and use what we mentioned before. All right, great. Thank you, Eric. I think we covered all the use cases, and thank you for staying late, guys, and for your patience. The recording will be available soon, and we will resume next week with another topic. I guess based on the votes, most likely we will go with the topic of abuse RM in English this time, and probably we're going to have a French session about mapping, and then a dedicated session for all the updates that we have on AI and automation, because you probably seen recently that we introduced an N8N layer for multiple automations, and we introduced more capabilities on the MCP server. Those are worth exploring on a live session. As usual, feel free to reach out through Discord, to GitHub. If you're facing issues, the team will be pleased to assist you and spread the news. Thank you again, Eric. And until next time, guys.